Oh my sweet baby Anakin, just when you thought the Acolyte couldn't destroy Star Wars canon and the lore even further, Leslie Headland and company said hold my soy latte as they dropped episode 8 on us like a 10-pound bag of banta fodder. At least it's over, right? This show can't hurt us or the franchise anymore. Wait, they're talking about season 2? There will never be peace in the galaxy again. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So episode 8 of The Acolyte had about 45 minutes to wrap everything up. And a good portion of that 45-minute runtime was dedicated to making some Star Wars fans question their life decisions. How do we collectively, as a fan base, continue to keep putting ourselves through this bullshit?
Why do these things always happen to me?
Well, I know why I'm doing it, because it's my job. But outside of that, if any of you watching this video right now stuck with this show and watched all 8 episodes, you are a saint. You know, it's not so much that this show is poorly made. I mean, it is poorly made. But I think the bigger issue is that it's seemingly going out of its way to contradict everything that we know about Star Wars. And it's not doing it in an interesting or thought-provoking way. It's doing it in a way that feels mean-spirited. And it feels like they are making these creative decisions to further stick it to the fans who actually care about things like lore and canon more so than they already have. I mean, it has to be on purpose at this point, right? Listen, if you don't know by now, these videos contain spoilers. I know most of you do not give a shit, but I thought I would give you fair warning before I jump right into the most egregious reveals of the night.
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
We'll start with Darth Plagueis. Yes, the mythical figure that we've heard legends about makes a brief appearance in episode 8. There was a lot of speculation coming into this episode that he would show up, and there were a lot of people like myself who were hoping that he wouldn't. Because we all knew that Disney Star Wars, and more specifically Leslie Headland, could never do that legend justice. Well, he does make a brief appearance here, lurking in the shadows, observing the events of the ridiculous plot of this show. Now, some may see this as inconsequential because he doesn't really do anything. Others will see this as a big moment simply by him just appearing. But I think if you look at the big picture and you take into consideration what this show and this episode is potentially suggesting, this may go down as Disney Star Wars' most egregious decision yet. And that is saying a lot when you consider their track record. To me, what Leslie Headland is suggesting by including him in this episode is that he was influenced by or learned about the ability to create life through the Force from the twins in The Acolyte, or more specifically, from their lesbian witch coven. Basically saying that May and OSHA are the catalyst for one of the most pivotal moments in Star Wars lore. And I'm sorry you had to know that that was going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. For one, it does make it feel like you are trying to rewrite Star Wars history in your own image, which in effect further desecrates the legacy that George Lucas once built. I mean, what you are essentially saying is that Palpatine's whole sales pitch to Anakin, and possibly Anakin's very existence, in addition to Palpatine's origin, was all influenced by this train wreck of a show.
No, 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 no! Hell no!
To me, if that is the case, then this truly is a legacy killer. Now, I know people say that all the time when it comes to Disney Star Wars, and yet they keep making more shows. But this could very well be the final nail in the coffin, just based on how big of a slap in the face this actually is, both to the fandom and to the franchise as a whole. It also begs the question, if your goal was to tell a story like this from the perspective of the Sith, why include OSHA and May's story at all? Why not just make a Darth Plagueis show? Now again, I don't have a lot of faith in the current regime to do that right, but in that case, at the very least, we wouldn't have to go through this whole song and dance with characters that most of us do not give a shit about.
I don't care!
And for those who may be wondering, in addition to the Plagueis reveal, no, May and OSHA's story is not concluded in a way that's either satisfying or intriguing. At the end of the day, to spare you some of the boring details, it basically comes down to OSHA finally learning about what Soul did. OSHA then kills Soul in a fit of rage, even though she's never shown the ability to be able to do that up until this point. And in the process, the kyber crystal of the lightsaber she is holding at the time turns red, basically completing her journey to the dark side. And she then agrees to train under Discount Ezra Miller, and all of the people who care about shipping these two characters instead of an actual story are now rejoicing. The cheesy fan fiction plot is now complete.
Look how they massacred my boy.
I assume this was intended to get people excited about a potential season 2, but I ask the question once again, how are we supposed to give a shit about OSHA's journey, or any character in this show for that matter, when the showrunners have done absolutely nothing to make me care about them? The Kyber Crystal moment in Soul's death should have been this huge emotional moment that the show properly built to over its 8-episode run. Instead, it came off as very underwhelming, anticlimactic, and like most things in this show, abrupt. And people complain that Anakin's turn to the dark side was abrupt. What has happened throughout the course of this show to suggest that OSHA is capable of something like this? In addition to the sibling melodrama, we also got somewhat of a resolution to the whole Jedi cover-up. And it basically amounts to the green chick telling the Senate that Soul was a rogue Jedi and he was acting alone. And this whole moment is basically meant to inspire more distrust in the Jedi as a whole. This show is very obviously trying to play with perspectives and point of views. But you can't help but feel like, based on the overall presentation, that their ultimate goal was a smear campaign against the Jedi, orchestrated by Disney Lucasfilm.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them.
It basically comes down to them feeling like the world that George Lucas created and established is somehow still up for interpretation. And interpretation can be fine if you have competent creators delivering that interpretation. And to me, the Acolyte definitely does not have that. The other big reveal is that the green chick basically goes to have a conversation with Yoda at the end of the episode. Remember when people were doing mental gymnastics to explain how it's possible for Kayundi Mundi to be alive during this time, let alone having knowledge of the Sith, when in episode 1 he himself says that the Sith haven't been around in a very long time. Some people say that that line is up to interpretation, but I say that's a lot of code. If the green chick is going to tell Yoda about this whole situation, as insinuated, that blows a massive hole in the theory that all of this is up to interpretation, and it basically confirms that the Jedi should have known that the Sith were active the entire time. Discount Ezra Miller and OSHA are clearly Sith. Yoda is presumably about to know about them, so please explain to me how that doesn't break canon.
Good luck. You're gonna need it.
They literally would have been better off making the Jedi look like douchebags and continuing with the whole cover-up storyline. The Jedi are already ruined. At least if they continued with the cover-up, the plot holes in the show would be considerably less egregious. Bottom line, in the end, does any of this really matter? Most of the Star Wars fandom has checked out completely already anyway. So a majority of the people who were going to ask questions about all of this aren't even around anymore. And maybe that was the goal the entire time. I wouldn't put it past Disney Lucasfilm. At the end of the day, The Acolyte is another poorly made Disney Star Wars project that, when you stop and think about it, is Star Wars in name only. To me, The Acolyte is a massive failure on every level, and it just might be the biggest Disney Star Wars atrocity to date. That's why I'm going to give The Acolyte Season 1 the Disgusted Ian Malcolm.
That is one big pile of
Y'all be cool. Nah.